I, Ibrahim Traoré, speak not as a politician, but as an African son, and I swear this continent will never again bend to the will of outsiders. Our land is not a prize to be bargained. Our people are not tokens in someone else's strategy, and our sovereignty is not for sale. From this day forward, we will defend it relentlessly. It began as an unremarkable Tuesday in the heart of Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso. Dawn broke gently over the dusty rooftops. Merchants unlocked their stalls, and children hurried along narrow streets with school bags bouncing against their backs. Life moved as it always did, right up until the ground began to tremble under the roar of a dozen military trucks. They rolled down the main boulevard like iron beasts, engines humming with restrained power. People paused mid-step, drawn into silence. This was no ordinary patrol. Every vehicle moved with deliberate intent, soldiers inside rigid as stone, eyes fixed on a single target. Their destination seemed harmless at first glance, a modest office building towards the city's eastern quarter. Glass facade, neat logo, polished doorway. The kind of place you walk past every day without remembering. But beneath that polite exterior lay an intricate hive of deception. As the convoy halted, boots hit the asphalt in perfect rhythm. No shouted orders, no hesitation, just a single, silent advance. In seconds, the soldiers breached the doors, and the truth was exposed. Inside, the scene looked nothing like a telecommunications firm. Server racks towered along the walls, encrypted terminals blinked relentlessly, and corridors were cluttered with locked files and secure devices. For months, President Traoré's intelligence teams had traced irregular data spikes back to this building. What they uncovered wasn't business activity. It was surveillance, remote monitoring, an intelligence hub operating covertly under foreign command. It was the first piece of a much larger puzzle. Before noon, 6 other sites across the country were raided. They looked like tech startups, consulting firms, infrastructure developers. All apparently respectable, all perfectly ordinary. Until you stepped inside. Then the disguise fell apart. Hidden communications, foreign hard drives, backdoor access points, and in every case, the invisible hand behind it was the same. For the first time in recent memory, a foreign intelligence network in Africa wasn't quietly ignored or tolerated. It was dismantled, in broad daylight, without apology, without compromise. No pre-recorded speeches came beforehand, no polite messages to embassies. Only action. At 2 o'clock that afternoon, Traoré stood before the cameras. Composed, steady, almost calm. He didn't raise his voice. He simply declared, Africa can no longer be treated as the world's forgotten corner. And the effect was electric. He canceled every single contract tied to the intelligence network. He ordered foreign personnel involved in covert operations to leave the country immediately. Anyone refusing to depart would be treated as an enemy of the state. Images soon flooded social media. Soldiers escorting foreign staff out of glass-walled offices. Servers wrapped and lifted into military trucks. Company logos ripped down from building fronts. To outsiders, it might have looked chaotic. To the people of Burkina Faso, it looked like justice arriving at last. Crowds gathered not in anger, but in celebration. Handmade banners appeared. Africa belongs to us, and no more hidden hands. Students marched in rhythm. Farmers brought baskets of grain and placed them outside the presidential compound as a symbolic gesture of support. For decades, they had been assured that foreign companies came to help, yet they had only grown poorer while outsiders grew powerful. Now, for the first time, they saw someone take a stand. Across the ocean, the ripple turned into a shockwave. In Tel Aviv, emergency meetings were held behind closed doors. Senior officials argued over next steps, reminding their leaders that this wasn't just about one country. It was a spark that could ignite the whole continent. The fear was well-founded. Within hours, Mali halted all purchases of foreign defense systems tied to intelligence networks. Guinea began investigating its own tech contractors. Niger announced a full audit of all foreign agreements signed in the past decade. Suddenly, Africa wasn't being observed. Africa was reacting. Traoré had not made these decisions overnight. He followed a theory he had quietly developed for years, a doctrine rooted in transparency, absolute resistance to exploitation, and collective protection among African nations. No more hidden contracts. No more infiltration disguised as investment. No more isolation. One African nation defending another when threatened by foreign manipulation. Old speeches were replayed and shared online. In one of them, Traoré reminded the world, "You came charting our rivers and cataloging our minerals. You funded divisions and sold us chains disguised as aid. When we resisted, you labeled us unstable. Today, we reclaim our voice." In Washington and Paris, officials issued cautious statements calling for calm and conversation. But their words seemed hopelessly disconnected from the new reality. Traoré had already touched something deeper, a long-buried sense of dignity awakening across the continent. By the end of the week, newspapers in Ghana and Nigeria openly demanded investigations into all foreign contracts signed with telecom and cybersecurity firms. In South Africa, lawmakers stood in parliament and demanded answers about unexplained monitoring technologies installed in city centers. For the first time in living memory, African nations weren't waiting for someone else to define the future. They were writing it. And at the center of that shift stood a man who had been willing to take the first blow. There will be consequences. Powerful nations will try to retaliate through sanctions, pressure, disinformation, or worse. Some African leaders may hesitate out of habit or fear of losing external support. But in villages and crowded city streets, people now speak the same truth. Traoré did not simply defend a country. He awakened a continent. A young woman from Ouagadougou said to a reporter, "We've spent too long with our heads down. Today, we finally looked up." Africa is not asking for permission. It is simply standing. And the world, for the first time in a very long time, is listening.